So that's one of the reasons that the LHC is a tremendously important scientific piece of apparatus, because it's been designed, and it's running beautifully now, and it will answer this question that's really been, I think, causing a blockage in our understanding of the fundamental forces of nature now for arguably 40 or even 50 years. Now, just before I move on from LHC, and with more relevance, I think, to the debate that we had earlier about the nature of PR, I suppose, as I started this talk showing Richard Feynman talking about the scientific method, and we heard about the problems that your industry has in just convincing policymakers and the public that actually gas is the way forward when the evidence says, yes, it is. We've had our share of controversy at Large Hadron Collider. One of the areas of controversy stemmed from some quite bizarre but possible theories about the nature of gravity. One of the great questions in physics, I should say, is why gravity is such a weak force. You may say, well, it's not weak if you fall off a ladder, but think about this. I can lift that up, this clicker, even though planet Earth is trying to pull it down. There's a whole planet trying to stop me lifting that up by the force of gravity. It's very easy for me to lift it up. That's because the other three forces of nature are millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of times stronger than gravity. We don't know why, but some of those theories suggest that it's because we live in a higher dimensional universe. Now, just stay with me a second. I won't do this very long. But essentially, what they suggest is that we live on a sheet. So imagine that our universe, our 3 dimensions in this room and time, are just a sheet of paper, and we're confined to the sheet. Light moves on the sheet. The strong and weak nuclear forces that stick the nuclei together sit on the sheet. So we don't perceive anything off this sheet. Now, if you think about it, that means there could be another sheet millimeters away from us now. But if light doesn't travel between the sheets, if none of the forces of nature travel between the sheets, you can't perceive it at all. Except in these theories, gravity can travel into the wider, higher dimensional universe. It's almost like this sheet is in this room. This room is the universe. Gravity is diluted, and that's why it's so weak. These are speculative theories. There's some basis in them. String theory is an example of one of these speculative theories. But if that's true, and if the extra dimensions are set up in the right way, then at CERN, it's possible we could see them. It's just possible. And that means that we could make little objects which were unfortunately given the name of black holes. Now, they're not black holes in the sense that stars collapse and suck everything in. These would be microscopic objects that would decay very quickly, very difficult to see. People spend a lot of time working out how to detect them. But of course, black hole as a word is a PR nightmare. And so you probably were aware of every piece of the press across the world saying that when we turned the LHC on, we would, at worst, destroy the Earth, at best, just Switzerland. But anyway, it would, the press reaction was interesting. My favourite headline that I think summed up the view of physicists was that, which was from Gizmodo, the website, who said, CERN to morons, LHC won't destroy Earth. We didn't help ourselves. The press officer from LHC, a friend of mine, James Gillis, tried to reassure people by pointing out the planet hadn't been destroyed yet, which was, again, a bit of a PR disaster. Another physicist said it's quite hard to destroy the Earth. Again, not very good. I became famous, unfortunately, in the UK for saying something along those lines. You can fill in the star if you want. But it's interesting because getting back to this point of evidence and how you get the public to, and politicians indeed, to just look at evidence alone and remove the emotion from it, you could ask the question, well, how do you know that LHC won't destroy the planet? And it's a good question. It's a reasonable question. We sell the LHC in public by saying that it's part of the exploration of the unknown. If you don't know what you're going to find, how do you know that it's safe? Well, actually, we know that it's safe just because of this graph. It's the only graph that I would like to show. But it's a graph of the energy of cosmic rays hitting the surface of the Earth's atmosphere. Now, we know there are very high-energy particles from space bombarding the Earth all the time. Actually, energy is there along the horizontal axis. The red vertical line is the energy that the LHC collides particles with. So everything to the right of that line is a high-energy collision that's happened and been measured on the Earth, in the Earth's atmosphere, with energies far in excess of those that are generated at the LHC. Actually, each one of it's a logarithmic scale. Each one of those clicks goes up a factor of 10. So there are collisions, millions and millions of times the energies that we generate at LHC happening all the time above our heads. We know the Earth's here, we know the Sun's still here. We can calculate exactly how many collisions there have been in the observable universe, and we haven't seen any evidence of any instability in nature, not surprisingly. So we know. But it's a great challenge to make sure that the evidence speaks for itself, and as many of you, I suppose, in the energy industry know, public hysteria, PR, is one of the most important things to control in getting your entirely sensible argument across. So in the last couple of minutes, I want to just journey, I suppose, further out than the Earth, but narrow in a bit from the observable universe, and just take a look at a picture. I cannot pass up the opportunity of speaking at Gastech without talking about the planet that in 250 years' time, as you said, when gas supplies become exhausted perhaps, or begin to run out, what are you going to do about it? The thing is, you need to come here. This is Saturn. Not particularly Saturn. Actually, this is a beautiful picture. You can't quite see. If you could just dim the lights a little bit. I've zoomed in. This was a picture taken by the Cassini spacecraft, which is, at the moment, returning beautiful images from Saturn. And it took this picture relatively recently. You can just see there a faint white dot that looks like a moon above one of the rings in this picture. Turns out that's a picture of planet Earth. So that was the Earth taken from 750 million miles away. I think it's a beautiful picture. But only about a year ago now, Cassini is an astonishing spacecraft, a great piece of technology, a great engineering achievement. It's in orbit around Saturn, now returning pictures. It returned this one a few months ago, which I think is astonishing. And this is the picture of the future of LNG, I think. For this reason, this looks like some sort of computer-generated image, but it isn't. That's one of Saturn's rings and one of its smaller moons orbiting above the ring. In the background is the largest moon of Saturn, Titan, which is a quite astonishing world. It's got a very, very thick nitrogen atmosphere. It's at minus 279 Celsius, and it is absolutely covered in methane. That planet, that moon, has methane lakes, it has methane rain, it has methane snow. It has a methanological cycle in exactly the same way that Earth has a hydrogen cycle. How do we know? Well, this is a beautiful picture, actually, just of a very close flyby showing the haze of the dense atmosphere of Titan. And this is a relatively recent picture showing sunlight reflecting off a methane lake called Kraken Mare at the north pole of Titan. This lake is bigger than the Caspian Sea, and it is almost, we think, pure methane. So there it is. That's where you need to go. And actually, having said that, just think about it. 250 years' time, we've only been flying. The Wright brothers were only just a century ago. So I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility, actually, that there will be mining ships on the way to Titan. There's plenty of hydrocarbons on that moon. An absolutely beautiful place to be. So let me finish by saying this. At the start of the talk, I tried to just take you on a kind of a little fun trip, I suppose, through bits of science that I do. But there is a serious point behind it. And as I've touched on it, I think it's this. I think it's really, for me, I spend a lot of time trying to explain the benefits of science and engineering to our society. I also spend time trying to explain the benefits of progress to our society. And I think this is one of, if we could dim the lights a bit again, perhaps, this is one of my favorite pictures to show what I mean by the benefits of progress, the benefits of energy supply to our society. This is a picture, it's a mosaic taken by NASA spacecraft. It's a beautiful picture called The Earth at Night. It's a mosaic, obviously, of the Earth's surface at a cloudless night. And I spoke at an environmental conference recently, and I asked the question, looking at that, first of all, what's the most remarkable thing? Planet Earth is a beautiful place, but actually, to an alien coming in from outside the solar system, the most remarkable thing about it is the lights, it's the civilization. And you ask yourself the question, where would you most like to live? Where is child mortality the lowest? Where is public health the best? Where is the quality of life the best? It's in the places that are light and not in the places that are dark. One of my favorite authors, Douglas Adams, once said this, which I think is a very powerful thing to say. He said, we don't have to save the world. The world is big enough enough to look after itself. What we have to be concerned about is whether or not the world we live in will be capable of sustaining us in it. Now, it was said many times that energy demand will increase over the next, 40 years or so by a factor of 2. For me, that's to be celebrated, because for me, the measure of our progress as a civilization would be to see how those lights would expand, how they would move around into Africa and South America, into Asia and China. So it seems to me that the message that I believe in, it seems to me the message that you're putting out, is that energy use is a good thing. It's the way we produce energy that is potentially a bad thing. But escalating energy use is not to be condemned and not to be resisted. It seems to me it's to be celebrated. So let me finish with this thought. One of my, I think, favourite discoveries as a science communicator was a man called Humphrey Davy, who was doing his science. He existed in, back the 1770s, the 1780s, 250 years ago almost. He's most famous for making energy production safer by discovering the Davy lamp, right, the thing that made coal mining, certainly in Britain, a far safer thing to do. And when asked, well, why do people mine coal? Why do industrial societies have to grow? Why do you have to do science and engineering? He said this. He said, nothing is so fatal to the progress of the human mind than to presume that our views of science are ultimate, that there are no mysteries in nature, that our triumphs are complete, and that there are no new worlds to conquer. I think those are wonderful words. Thank you for your attention.